I, like many other independent authors, found myself in a catch-20 when I was getting started here. But actually, that's kind of a lie. I started writing well before anyone saw any of my. Uh, if you've ever known an author, probably figured out there that typically almost all of them have like extreme self-confidence issues, and it can be pretty hard to take their craft successfully seriously to like think it's good enough. You'll hear all the time about that's just a thing that happens basically. Uh, but everyone who wants to become a published author, particularly if they go the self-pub route, they have to make the decision of when have I created something good enough to ask money for? And even if it is good enough to ask for money, who am I going to sell it to? Because just to let you know, reader, viewer, paying for ads is paying to buy fame. You don't make money unless you're like severely overcharging for your book. But then if you're charging too much, you'll get sales through your ads, and it's going to net out negative. Every form of marketing for a book, unless it's a really good book, loses money. Basically, I have not found anyone that has actually come out and said, "Yeah, I did X, Y, and Z program. I spent, you know, this amount of dollars, and I made this amount plus this in royalties directly because of that." Nobody has ever been able to forward to me and say, "I spent money to do this, and here's the proof that it paid off." It doesn't happen. The only positive marketing is the free marketing, by definition, and most notably word of mouth, right? So if you're just getting started, you have to have people that are interested in what you have to produce. But if all you are is a writer, how do you get people to care about you except through your writing? Hard problem. And that is what I was considering when I released my first novel, because I kind of came to the decision that eventually I'll write the perfect book. Now that is my pie in the sky moonshot goal. I want to write a novel eventually that will be read and enjoyed 100 years after I am not at that quality yet. I'm not sure anyone alive is at that quality. But I decided that I had to start releasing something, uh, and preferably a lot more than something, because like I have to get my writing out there in order to build an audience for my writing. And I decided to dual path a free web novel on Royal Road, as well as standalone novels through Amazon and Barnes and Noble, print on demand services. And starting a free web novel, see, you can always just take it down. You can always edit it. Whatever. I started that first, got some traction, not runaway success. I'll do a video on Dying Emperor. But I had to. The big issue was, okay, am I going to pay money for cover, for upload, for ISBNs, for editing, for marketing, you name it, to put this on the market? Do I think this is good enough? Why do I think this is this good enough to mark me out as a holy crap breakout author, or is this just good enough that I need to start that it will start building me fans and if someone out there has a better strategy than just taking a risk based on beta reader feedback, let me know. I basically just wrote manuscripts until I had one that clicked with enough people I showed it to. I said, "This is it. I gotta take the risk. I have to put something out there." And that was what led up to releasing my first novel, book one of the Bastian Blackstone series, Faceless. Now, when I went into creating this, I basically just got instigated by this speaker I was listening to who said that an author should start with a murder mystery because it is immediately apparent if they know what they're doing. If they try to write a murder mystery, because you can't, like, if you screw it up at all, it's immediately obvious. And you know what? I probably screwed this up a bit. Full disclosure here. I know I'm making this video theoretically to sell this book to you, but the book has flaws. I'm aware this book has flaws. Most notably in the plot construction. Uh, but like I said, this is a murder mystery novel. The pitch of this book is Detective Blackstone. He's a cop in 2140 in the cyberpunk city of Bastion. And he gets called in to investigate a body that is unidentified, and that's just wrong. Because this is a full surveillance state run by an artificial intelligence who sees and records everything. All crimes get recorded if they are within shot of a camera. This apartment should have been recorded. Like, it should have been noted automatically that this person died instead of his landlord showing up days later to smell. And that forms the crux of the mystery. You know, that is a mystery. It is a contradiction in facts that the detective has to unravel. And from that premise, I basically just explored the setting because this was not my first foray into Bastion. In fact, this is like my fourth. This was like my fourth or fifth now, depending on how you count rewrite. In this setting, Bastion lives rent free in my head. I know the city very well. I know the kinds of places that are in it. I know the structure. I know who runs it, how they run it, why they run it that way, how people get fed, how they get power. You name it. All the itty gritty details of a hard sci-fi setting. Although, see my notes on hard sci-fi. I know all of it. And I don't really put a lot of it into the story, except as it relates to the story. Which is why when I talk to people about this book normally, I'd basically describe it as it's a very good introduction to the setting. Even now, I think I did very well on the setting. I think that's basically the biggest selling point for this book, looking back on it. The setting is interesting enough in its proposals and the situations and the places that the detective goes, portraying the way that technology can evolve and the way that hyper urbanization can adapt technology in order to suit the survival needs of people. Because this is a walled city, generally speaking, people aren't allowed out. It is designed to be sieged, even though it's 2040 in the future. Because there are reasons for that. I don't really get into this in the book because it's a murder mystery. It's not about the founding of the city or anything. But you get places like, what do incredibly poor people do to get high-speed internet connections to play games? Because that is their soma of choice. That is the way that they find entertainment to take the burden off. Well, how about that? How about I bring back a future version of PC cafes and make it just a bit more grim because it's people plugging in through their neural implants to get into virtual reality, and they climb into these like pigeonhole coffin slots like a big mausoleum. So they lie down, take a minimal space, and they just plug in like they're jacking into the Matrix, so they can have fun in VR. All right, so that becomes a meeting place on the ground. You start getting a mingling of people that are trying to scrounge out enough pennies that they can afford enough minutes in the day so they can enjoy themselves online. It becomes a meeting place. People come and go. It is the equivalent of like a medieval fantasy tavern, right? Because this is the watering hole. You know, you get a scene like that. You put in some clues. Uh, then there are interesting features in the setting about the role of cops because this is a police officer as a detective. Well, he's technically military police. That the traditional role of civilian policing is actually done by corporate security because it's a cyberpunk setting. And I decided that I wanted them to be in conflict with each other because this Bastion has major issues that they come down very hard on. And the way I decided to use that is because Detective Blackstone is the one good cop, basically. He's the guy who still shows up and still cares. He still tries to help, which I think is incredibly critical to a likable and heroic main character for this kind of series. But that brings him in conflict with the people he's trying to help because they look at him and they see MP. They see the kind of person who shows up to shoot people. Because if they bother to show up, it's serious. It's a pandemic might break out. The terrorists have shown up. You got to put out a political fire or something. Something major is going on that they crack down on. And if it's not majored, people typically expect, oh, like Phoenix Construction's goons will just show up to clean this up because, they control this neighborhood. Because that is what it means in this setting for megacorps to have become megacorps. And that creates character conflict. That is what gets people engaged with the character. And that is fundamental to a good story. To making the reader like the protagonist is to want to do stuff like make him the underdog, put him on the side of justice, but have circumstances malign him and all. But that kind of just got a clue and a conflict, so it paced well. It sets him up to identify the next phase in the story, which is I'm just jumping into the plantation arc, is what I refer to it as, where he gets a clue about, like, hey, so the guy that I can't identify needed these kinds of resources. The only one that he could have been working with would be these people over here, because the detective, you do want him to be making logical conclusions and piecing things together that makes sense to the reader when pointed out, but the detective gets there just slightly ahead of the reader, if you want to be smart, right? And I fell back at that point on types of writing that I was more familiar with, which is to say, I wrote a chase sequence. I wrote a gunfight action sequence, running through the dark with people turning on him in a strange setup because he goes into basically a sewage treatment plant that is used to generate fertilizer for internal plantations, which allowed me to have high action, panic, fear. He's isolated because he is inside the territory of a megacorp that's not friendly to him. And I also get to explore understandable technology being applied in a sort of novel way, but some people are going to recognize that's actually just current technology that we could invest in if we wanted to. Like, today, you can have that technology if you wanted to. It does work like that. But it creates extra meat to the scene where it's not just, and then this guy shows up in gunshots this, and they bring out a high pressured hose and blast them there. It gives structure to the choreography, and honestly, the chase sequence works really well. Unfortunately, it works too well because that's dead center in the book, which brings me back to my point that the plot structure of Faceless is kind of jank. The best part from everyone that's read the book is that because it's right at the point where, like Blackstone, and then you get this surprising, dangerous action sequence with super high stakes because they're going to beat him to death. Is the stakes of the scene. And then I just kind of get out of that, and it goes back into, well, for a bit he's on medical leave until he gets in a fight with his wife because marital problems. That's what's driving him to go wander around the streets. You gotta give your characters a family life of some variety, right? And the story just kind of meanders forward from there. And I don't want to continue from there because this video is supposed to sell the book. Link in the description, by the way. But honestly, I'm just kind of talking about it to get this off my chest because I haven't read a good book worth reviewing recently. Looking at the pillars, though. Janky plot, good setting. I'm happy with the character, but my supporting cast could have been executed better. And I say it could have been executed better because I'm currently executing. I think the book actually is paced fine, but pacing is an illusion. No one actually knows what pacing. Pacing is a measure of how much people enjoy reading what's on the page, and that comes from how much you like the character, how much you're engaging with atmosphere and the tone. Which, by the way, I'm actually quite happy with the tone because it is, I think, the perfect level of societal issues, but people still making the best of it. Because it's not just like, ooh, crime, ooh, muck and grime and homeless people and the cyberpunk edge runners solution of just walk through dirty alleys where people are pleasuring themselves in VR in public buck naked to show just how degenerate society has become and everyone's chopped off limbs to get chrome. And I don't like that. The genre isn't that popular, I think, because most people are just kind of about that kind of crap. And I intentionally don't ever want to write a nihilist doomer ending. That is mostly a promise going forward. If you ever buy a book from me, it's not going to be a doomer ending. Until I finally do one and I surprise you all. Stay tuned. I think a lot of people are really with, and then everyone dies and everything's terrible and they never managed to overthrow the machine. They couldn't make a dent in industrial society. That's just not where I want to go with stories. I want to portray more optimistic on the character level, where you can still find meaning, still find relationships that matter. You can still make your own position better. Most importantly, no matter how crap society is, you can still be a good person. That is constantly on my mind when I am writing Blackstone as a character. Bad setting, bad society. It's a bugman society where most people are poor and they live in a closet escaping to virtual reality because they work a dead-end job. But you know what? They enjoy virtual reality. They aren't hurting other people typically. They understand what's going on. They are making their life have meaning to them as best they can. Blackstone is out there trying to help people. That genuinely matters. So that's what I go into when trying to construct not just Faceless, but the sequels, which is out now, and this is significantly better. That's what happens a year and a half later after more practice, more study, more effort, more readers, and so on, feedback, etc. I'll do it behind the scenes on Gamma Coin. In fact, I'm probably going to go through my books in series. So the tone and the setting, I'm still very happy with this. And I just kind of have to say, yeah, it's not the perfect book. I recognize that. I am pursuing top quality. It's a pursuit, though. It's development. It's progress. It's a ladder you got to climb up. I'm not ashamed of this book. I just recognize that there's some janky points. It's not a 5 out of 5 book. If you ever hear me say that, I must be drunk or something if I'm saying that. But I think it's good and enjoyable. I think there are benefits to it. I don't think there's anything that people are going to read and go, oh, what a... Except maybe some people won't like the fact that there are surprise flashback chapters to different perspectives. I thought that would be an engaging way to cover Blackstone learning the backstory, the solution to the murder. It's been hit or miss, to be honest. If you pick up a copy, though, I hope it's a hit for you. But like I said, this is a setting primer. I am kind of obsessed with Cyberpunk in this setting particularly. I've got a sequel already. I have way more coming out. So yeah, that's a behind the scenes on what I went into with Faceless. I wanted to write a murder mystery in a setting that I was already familiar with, where I wanted to look at the cracks in the technological system and tease out a character story from that. And technically I succeeded. If I were to sit down and plot this out today, I'd probably do it somewhat substantially differently with the structure of giving out the clues and the red herrings, and building up the antagonist better. But you live and you learn. You gotta start somewhere to start building an audience, don't you? And I started with Faceless. Link in the description if you want to check it out. You can get the ebook for pretty cheap. So then, I hope you enjoyed this behind-the-scenes look at what is on my mind about my own books. And if you liked it, I will keep going through the rest of my collection. Till then, cheers. Like the video.